Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns 24/7, joined by Eric Henry. We call him Cross Country Henry because my man Eric Henry is fresh off of about a 16-hour drive. Is that about right, Eric?
Yeah, just under 17 hours. Did not do it all in one shot. I am not, some 18-wheeler, truck driver. We did split that trip up in threes, but I made the last leg, Chip. 6 hours and 2 minutes in from Ruston, Louisiana to beautiful Austin, Texas, downtown Austin, Texas, where I stopped in Ruston to watch a little week 0 football, but now I'm ready for the main event, the showcase we got coming up this weekend, the big show, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're game week, baby. But real quick, so what week 0 football were you watching in Ruston?
For the folks who are not familiar, who did not catch last week's episode, I spent the past 5 years covering Conference USA football and specifically FIU. So I stopped in to watch year 2 of the Sonny Cumbie era, the air raid, vaunted air raid at La Tech. Hank Bachmeier, Chip, former Boise State signal caller, right? He has now found another home at La Tech. Watch them versus my old teammates to cover in FIU and Mike McIntyre. So it was a very eventful game. I feel bad for FIU's quarterback, Grayson James. Finished the game with 4 yards passing. I think that is a record that will probably stand for a long time in FIU history. Not all on him, of course. Play calling left a lot to be desired. Receiver struggled to get open. It was a whole compilation of things. They also lost 2 players to the P5, a tight end to Auburn, a receiver to Maryland. So the playmakers they did have were not there. But yeah, when you throw for -2 yards in the second half, Chip, and you're playing against a veteran quarterback like Hank Bachmeier in an air raid, he brought the Bulldogs back and they took the win. So, but yeah, it was great to watch the entire game from the field. I mean, I don't care what level. It's fun to just sit there and be able to watch the entire game from the field like I was able to. But yeah, that's a tough number for the young man at quarterback.
So either Sonny Cumbie's defense is the monsters of the Midway or the Ravens circa 2000, or this was a shootout with FIU running the ball like crazy.
Yes. FIU, they had, I believe, 190 something yards on the ground. Chip, on the second play of the game was a 67-yard Russian touchdown. So they jumped out to, believe this, FIU did lose the game 22-17, but jumped out to a 17-3 lead. That just goes to show you, the offense in the second half, you can't throw the football. Defense keeps it on the run, and that's what happens.
Wow. How about that?
So,
all right, there you go, kids. Now let's and Eric Henry has made it safe from his drive from Florida because you went and got your car.
Correct.
You're now a Texan, for God's sake.
Listen, so Chip, I mean, we won't delay, the fans what they want too much, but I have learned that unlike Florida, Texas, you cannot just put anything on the road. You guys have vehicle inspections and yearly, all this jazz. So once I get that done, get the Texas plates, get the Texas license, I will be a true Texan. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome. And I'm sure you were happy to see those drive friendly, welcome to the state of Texas signs. Because that is a long drive, my friend, and we're glad that you're back here in Austin, Texas, safe and sound, and ready to talk some Longhorns football because it is game week, kids. And I don't know. I mean, I know Texas fans are excited to get their eyeballs on these Longhorns. You got Rice. It's going to be a hot one. Today it was like 107 degrees in Austin. I mean, my car temperature said 111 at one point. As I've said, Fox don't care about what time they're playing this game because Texas is leaving the Big 12. They're not going to have to deal with Texas after this year. Texas is going to the SEC, which is an ESPN media rights product. So this will not happen once Texas is in the SEC, folks. Okay. So just know that. And my gosh, we had all kinds of crazy stuff going on this week. We had, Brett Yourmark playing the role of Vince McMahon, like hype man for Texas Tech. Hey, I'm going to be in Austin for Thanksgiving, so you better take care of business just like you did here last year. I'm like, Brett Yourmark, Vince McMahon, hype man for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. Did Brett forget as he was saying that he was going to be in Austin for Thanksgiving? Like, good luck getting in and out of the stadium there, Vince McMahon. You better have a little costume or some disguise, maybe a Bobby Valentine mustache to try and, get, I don't even know whose suite he's going to be in. Are they going to put him like in a penalty box to watch the game? What on earth? Since when does a conference commissioner start playing favorites?
Chip, I am glad that you called Brett Yourmark Vince McMahon, because that was literally the name that went through my mind when I saw that clip. I don't know if he just, is Brett Yourmark a New Yorker? I think he's a native New Yorker. I know he spent a lot of time, with Rock Nation and company. I don't know if he's got caught up in his bravado or what, but you nailed it, Chip. That was not a statement of a conference commissioner. It was a wrestling promo circa 1999 or whatever you want to say. I mean, he wasn't the Big 12 commissioner. He was playing the role of the television Big 12 commissioner, right? And getting caught up in the hype of, here I am amongst a base that, is going to be with me, and we're going to be this villainous character. Again, like you hit the nail on the head, Chip. He has to be in Austin. And quite frankly, I mean, Texas hasn't left the league yet. I mean, if you want to, feel the way you want to feel about the Horns, and for, I guess, to a lesser extent, Oklahoma, you can when they leave. And sure, it's going to make for an awkward year, but we all knew it was going to be a little bit of a, divorce, but we're still living in the same house for some time. Why don't you handle yourself with a little bit more professionalism or, the status of that role? So again, you hit the nail on the head, because that's the first name I thought of. He's not Brett Yourmark. He's Vince McMahon circa, 2010 or whatever you want to say.
Well, the last time I was in Lubbock was for the Texas Tech basketball game, where the Texas Tech students were lined up outside for 3 days to get their hands or their voices on Chris Beard. And they brought in Dusty Rhodes, the WWE son of a plumber, woo, and getting after getting the Tech fans all riled up. I don't know. Maybe it's in the air out there. But anyway, that was interesting. But it is game week, and I get it. It's Rice, and it's JT Daniels for the third time. This is amazing, folks. Talk about the age of the transfer portal. If you want an example of the age of the transfer portal, you're going to get it right here, 2:30 Saturday, when JT Daniels makes his third trip to Austin with a third different team. He was with USC back in 2018. He was with West Virginia last year, and now he's with Rice. And he also spent 2 years at Georgia, for crying out loud. This guy is the transfer portal personified, Eric. I mean, and JT Daniels at one point he was a 5-star quarterback coming out of Mater Dei. He was Amon-Ra St. Brown's high school quarterback at Mater Dei in California. And the guy he started at USC. Now he's at Rice. I don't know whether to hug him or slap him around and say, "What are you doing? What, how'd you go from USC to Rice?" And hell, he was with Georgia, for crying out loud. Eric, what's going on with my man JT Daniels?
Chip, you nailed it in terms of the way that the transfer portal has kind of made this carousel of players. We've seen players not only leave a team, go to a new team, but in some cases now go back to the team they've started with. And I will say this before I touch on JT Daniels, Chip, I am sad that Rice receiver or former Rice receiver, now Brad Rosner, he transferred to, I believe, West Virginia. I have to fact check that. But the reason I note that is because I was looking forward to nothing more, just to amplify your point, Chip, about the transfer portal. Looking forward to seeing nothing more than JT Daniels on his fourth team throw passes to an eighth-year receiver. Brad Rosner's in his eighth year of college football, but he has departed the Rice Owls shortly before the season started. I was looking at the Chip. I was going to make a note of that in our pregame preview, that just amplifies what college football is. A guy on his fourth program throwing to an eighth-year receiver. But Brad Rosner no longer with the program, so he'll just have to throw to Luke McCaffrey instead.
Wow.
But to your point, as far as JT Daniels, yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. A guy who's been well-traveled. And you talk about him. I won't go too heavy into the Rice analysis, but having covered Conference USA, as I mentioned, for the past 5 years, his program, they've really struggled to find quarterbacks, Chip. For really every year outside of the last year, Rice has turned to a transfer portal quarterback. That just goes to show you in today's day and age, if you can't recruit one, well, we'll just go find one in the portal because there's going to be one somewhere. And again, just to kind of further spotlight your point, it used to be, a guy who, had lost his job, right? Or someone who just was looking for a chance to play. Now, as we get further and further developed into the transfer portal, Chip, I don't think it's going to be an outlier. We're going to start seeing more and more of these high-profile 4-star and 5-star guys who may bounce around to 2 or 3 teams just because of the fact that that's where teams are going for their quarterback. They're not recruiting from high school anymore. High school recruiting, no position has suffered more than high school quarterback in terms of recruiting. So we might see, this might be a new thing. Maybe 10 years down the road, we'll have a dozen 5-star former recruits will be on their 3rd or 4th team. That's just the nature of the game in college football. So yeah, as you mentioned, and another thing, he's never beaten Texas. And listen, no disrespect to the Owls, but I don't think he's going to have his strongest shot to do it on Saturday. So that'll be another dubious distinction for him. 4 teams and another loss that we see coming to Texas.
Okay, so Mike Bloomgren.
Yes.
He's in his 6th year at Rice. My, how the time flies. And he's not doing well. By the way, his record is 16-39, Eric. He was 5-8 last year, but they do have 8 starters returning on offense and 7 starters returning on defense. They only scored 25 points per game last year, and they gave up 34.2. Is there anything about this Rice team that you remember from your?
Yeah, Chip, certainly. I mean, talking about remember, have you heard, are you familiar with the tagline, intellectual brutality? That's what the folks there at Rice, Mike Bloomgren, when he took the job, the tagline, intellectual brutality. Chip, no disrespect to Coach Bloomgren. That offense, I don't know how intellectual it was, but it was brutal to watch for plenty of years because of the fact they could not just find a quarterback. I'll run down a couple names. They went to Sean Stankiewicz, who was a Vanderbilt transfer my first year covering Conference USA in 2018. They then went to Tom Stewart, an Ivy League transfer. That didn't work out. They went to the kid Mike Collins from TCU. He had a measure of success, but he had to retire. Then they went to, TJ McMahon from Weber State. That didn't work out. So again, when I tell you that, that tagline, intellectual brutality is what they've wanted. I don't know how intellectual it's been, but it's been a pain to watch Rice offense. The big thing that I would say for Horns fans, if there's anything you really want to take away from this is that, Chip, big plays, there were none to be had from Rice. They would go on these 11, 12, 13, 14 play drives that they'd get 3 and 4 yards at a time, then try to come away with a touchdown. And the running joke amongst Conference USA beat writers was, hey, when Mike Bloomgren stepped to the podium last year and said, all right, we're going to try to, be a little more explosive. Does that mean, okay, you're not going to have 14 play drives? You're just going to have 9 play drives now? Because nothing has been explosive about the Rice offense. But I will say this, Chip, and this, will probably bring up memories for you being such a great college football, almost a historian in a sense. Gabe Taylor, the brother of Sean Taylor, is a Rice Owl, and he has been a standout safety. So nice to see that lineage live on. Obviously, the tragic death of Sean Taylor. So that is, I will say, a bright spot for Rice. But everything else has been, quite frankly, abysmal.
So Gabe Taylor is Sean Taylor's son?
Younger brother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's been a standout safety at Rice for the past few years. Really, I think this past year, I believe it's an honorable mention, recognition or nominee, but yeah, has been really a standout player and almost plays the same way as his older brother. I mean, you can see, just really trying to emulate himself. And of course, if you want to continue the football lineage, Luke McCaffrey was the quarterback at Nebraska, then transitioned to Rice and has made the switch from quarterback to receiver. He is Rice's leading target. So they do have some football lineage there, but just not enough, quite frankly, talent and or wins for Mike Bloomgren, who is really entering a year in which he needs to make a bowl or else.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. There is your Rice scouting report. Thank you, Eric Henry. What is the age difference between Sean Taylor and Gabe Taylor?
Oh, man, I wish I knew offhand. It's at least a dozen years, I believe.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing, because now you're seeing kids of guys who are Sean Taylor's age. That's amazing that they're brothers. Okay, so there's Rice, and here's the thing. Let's focus this conversation for a moment on what we want to see from Texas coming out of the Rice game that's going to make Texas feel better, fans, players, coaches, feel better about Texas going into its trip to Tuscaloosa. So, I'm just going to rip off a couple of, numbers here. 200 yards rushing. Love to see that, because I think Steve Sarkisian wants to take these receivers for a test drive, get Quinn Ewers oiled up, put some WD-40 on him, and see how that passing game's looking. But this is a game for Jonathan Brooks and CJ Baxter and Keelan Robinson, maybe even some Jaden Blue to get some carries in and see if this running game can get it done. Because Eric, if they have to be able to run the football a lot better than they showed, obviously, in that bowl game against Washington. And I get it. Steve Sarkisian said, hey, we came in with a passing game plan. But when Texas has struggled, i.e. the TCU game, i.e. the Oklahoma State game last year, it was an inability to run the football on their terms. And obviously you're going up against Alabama. It's not going to be easy, but I'd like to see 200 yards rushing from Texas in this game against Rice, to make me feel better about their ability to run the football. How about you?
Chip, I won't belabor the point too much, but you talked about the number of yards, and I am looking to see, quite frankly, how this team plays football in terms of, can we see, Chip, some more 12 personnel? Can we see a power run game? Can we see Texas have success when that they need to run the football? And we're going to talk about a lot of those things, some of our concerns, right, and take it or leave it. So again, I won't go too heavy into this. However, I've been very vocal about this on the boards, on Horns 24/7. I've written about it a bit. I just want to see them establish a power run game, because for me, you made mention of Steve Sarkisian maybe wanting to take A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Isaiah Nayor, JT Sanders out for a test drive. I want to see Texas come out and establish a power run game that they can then take into Bama. That is something that I know travels. If you can do that well, you or at least have something that you say, we can go into Bryant-Denny Stadium, a place where Nick Saban has only lost 5 times in the last 15 years, and we can do this well. And then that will allow for all of those pieces, the flashy, the toys, the Ferrari, we'll have to kind of some time during the season find, analogize these guys to cars, right? Is Xavier Worthy the Ferrari, and is AD Mitchell like the Range Rover, but those flashy pieces, those things will come along. I just want to see them come out and establish a run game when it matters, when it's coming, because you can take that into next week.
Yeah, and I want to see this defensive line just assert itself, like just drag Rice down to nothing in the run game, just shut it down, because my gut feeling is Alabama is going to be much heavier on the ground game this year than they've been, because if we're going to get Jalen Milroe at quarterback for Alabama, we know he can hurt you with his legs. And it kind of reminds me of KJ Jefferson from Arkansas when Texas went out to Arkansas 2 years ago and got ambushed, and KJ Jefferson's running all over him. And I think Alabama, they don't have the receivers they've had in the past. They clearly don't have a Bryce Young at quarterback. We don't really know what is going on at quarterback for Alabama, but my suspicion is that they're going to lean more heavily on their running game. And this is where Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy and Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton come in. And I want to see those guys just throw their muscle around and just clamp down on Rice to where you get no semblance of a running game from the Owls. I want to see that. And I cannot wait to see my man Jalen Catalon. Like, this is my guy, Eric. I mean, this is the guy. I'm saying little rosaries or whatever, rubbing a rabbit's foot or horseshoes or whatever for Jalen Catalon to stay healthy and AD Mitchell to stay healthy all year, because I think these guys are going to put on a show. And I mean, I'll throw Catalon out there. Give me a guy you cannot wait to see.
Because Catalon would have been my guy, but let's see. If I wouldn't say, you know what? Well, you know what? Hey, you know what, Chip?
He's a rock'em sock'em robot. I mean, everyone wants to see that.
Chip, and to your injury point with him, right? The reason we're knocking on wood, not only just for Texas this season, but people forget he was a hell of a player the last time he was fully healthy. So you just for that sake, you want to see him fully healthy. But I will give you one, just because this has been the name that has been the start, and you touched on the defensive line. Jaron Thompson, mean, nasty, and violent. Talking about that defensive line, the one name that has been talked about across the board. You know who I'm talking about? AC. Alfred Collins. I want to see him come out and establish himself against Rice. As I talked about, that's a team that's had no success offensively over the past 5 years. I mean, there's no two ways about it, right? So to see this Texas defense assert itself from the jump would be nice, and in specificity across that defensive line, as Jaron Thompson said, mean, nasty, and violent. And I think AC, someone who, Chip, you've been around here and I mean, he's really a combination of waited his turn, and now seemingly, as Steve Sarkisian and others have said, he's putting everything together. He's finding that consistency, right? So we want to see that translated from the week over to Saturday. So I will use AC as my guy I'm keeping an eye on.
Eric, listen, last year when Rice played UTSA, Rice ran it 32 times for 5 yards. That's what I'm looking for. Saturday at 2:30 at DKR. I'm looking for 32 carries for 5 yards. If the UTSA Roadrunners can do that to Rice. And by the way, the Houston Cougars last year held Rice to 25 carries for 92 yards. I would prefer more of the UTSA 32 carries for 5 yards. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, I want clamps.
So, Chip, now that you've read those numbers, does my tagline about the offense being brutal, is that
brutal?
Do you see why? So you absolutely are within your right to have those expectations, no doubt.
Oh my gosh. 32 carries for 5 yards. That's the gold standard. Jeff Traylor said it. Now Texas needs to surpass it. Um, and so yeah, and you mentioned the concerns. We did a roundtable as a staff at Horns 24/7 this past week. I'm sure if you're not a member of Horns 24/7, you need to be an annual member first of all, because that way you get all the VIP content on every site in the preeminent 24/7 sports network, in addition to having the incredible access to all of our content at Horns 24/7. And we did a roundtable of our top concerns going into the season that we want to see. And Eric, why don't you go first with your concern?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, mine was pretty simple. We're talking about a sub 200-pound quarterback in Quinn Ewers. And I made this point in the roundtable. Yes, you can point to a Bryce Young and you can point to a Stetson Bennett. But guess what, Chip? Those guys also missed time too. Those guys did have injuries during their collegiate career. And we're talking about a quarterback in Quinn Ewers who did have hernia issues coming out of high school. He's already missed time. We know what happened last year. I'm not shading Quinn Ewers, and Chip, you've asked Quinn this directly. You've talked about Steve Sarkisian. We've talked about the salmon, right? Is that the magic potion that all of us
salmon, man? That's the magic food. That's the secret sauce.
The salmon. The salmon is the superfood. I want to say it was David Bendos and salmon on top of a little salad. So we're going to try that and see if that works for us and produces the results. But in all seriousness, I'm not shading Quinn for changing his diet, right? Reducing the Chick-fil-A and incorporating more salmon. I'm just saying at 6'2", 195 pounds, when we've seen Quinn, he does look slight, not saying he can't hold up, but that's just a concern for me. So if Quinn Ewers is to miss games, how could that affect this season? Obviously we've got two talented backup quarterbacks, and we'll touch on them in one of our take it or leave it topics, but that's just something I'm keeping my eye on. I'm, again, knock on wood, don't want to see anybody get hurt, but in my mind, that's just a real concern.
No, I mean, I think it's an interesting point because he was 218 last year. He got run into the ground by Dallas Carter of Alabama, and he had a sternoclavicular sprain. He missed 3 games. It was a factor. He did not play against Texas Tech. Texas lost that game. And offensively, Texas struggled to get into a rhythm. Now, I think it's an interesting point because he looks almost wiry. But he says he's, clear-minded, that this food and the changing of his diet, everything. So, and it's hard to put on weight in camp. Guys are lifting, but man, you're out there in that 106, 107 degree heat. It's hard to maintain your weight that you've worked all winter and summer to put on. And so it's an interesting point, and let's see how Quinn Ewers handles it. I'm concerned about the running game, and you actually wrote a really great article about how Texas struggled to, run the ball in short yardage situations, critical situations, late game situations. I mean, they did a nice job in a handful of games. I mean, Iowa State, K-State, Baylor, Kansas last year, but we talk about the losses. We want to know what happened in the losses, and in the losses against TCU, they couldn't run it a lick with Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, and obviously against Oklahoma State, Steve Sarkisian didn't feel like he could just pound the ball when the numbers showed he could have just pounded the ball in the fourth quarter and probably won that game. So I want to see Texas with DJ Campbell, new starter on the offensive line at right guard, obviously with a new running back room, essentially, because Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson are in the NFL. So you've got Jonathan Brooks, you got CJ Baxter, as we mentioned, Keelan Robinson. I've heard Keelan Robinson's been a man possessed. I love the way he's hungry. He knows this is his opportunity. He does everything special teams wise. This should be a team that can run the football with all that experience back on the offensive line. But you had guys in Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson who were making things happen when the blocking wasn't there. They could make guys miss. They Pro Football Focus, Bijan Robinson led the nation in forced missed tackles. Not all those forced missed tackles were beyond the line of scrimmage. Some of those were in the backfield just to get the run started. So I want to see Texas be able to run the ball on its own terms when the defense knows they're going to run it. Now, I've said, look, Paul Chryst has come in. He's a power run guru. Maybe the passing game is going to be so good that they can throw to set up the run, and the defense is going to be guessing the whole game. Because that's been an issue. Sarkisian does a good job of scripting plays early in games. He tends to get his offense into a rhythm in a nice way. And then the defense makes its adjustments. And sometimes there's been a lack of adjustments to the defense's adjustments. And that's all about, you got to anticipate that stuff. You got to anticipate, okay, they're going to adjust this way. So then we're going to adjust that way. And have your counter plays and all the stuff, that comes off of the plays that you've run in the first half, all that. And that's been a struggle at times. And I think that's been a puzzler for a guy like Sarkisian, who's looked at as such a, bright offensive mind who can get matchups the way he wants in the RPO game. He can get the defender he wants in conflict and make plays off of that. And then at times it seems like in the second half of games, it looks like he's looking for the second half of his flip card. And like, what, did I lose a piece of my flip card or something? But that's what I'm looking for, because I just think that Texas could have been in the Big 12 championship game last year if they'd have been able to run the ball on their terms a little bit more. Our man Tommy Yarish, who you see here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel all the time. And if you're not subscribed to the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, just click that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a thing. Tommy's talking about, winning those one-score games, one-possession games. Sarkisian has a losing record in one-possession games. And I don't think you're going to have to worry about that this week. But, man, again, we're looking at Rice, what we want to see coming out of Rice, headed to Tuscaloosa. I mean, the Alabama game last year was a 1-point game, and it went the Tide's way because they were able to drive it down the field after our man Bert Auburn kicks that 40-plus yard field goal with 1:29 left to give Texas the lead. Texas fans are going bonkers in DKR. They're thinking, oh, my gosh, look at this. And then Bryce Young goes, whoop, 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 whoop. And the next thing you know, he's in field goal range, and their kicker kicks the game winner. So, and our man Hank South, our recruiting guru, says he wants to see Texas be the hunter. John Wick, Eric. Quinn Ewers is all about John Wick, that former hitman who was retired. He was out of the hitman life. John Wick. He was just chilling, and then all of a sudden, people broke in, killed his dog that his late wife gave him, and that pissed him off to no end. So then he goes out. He's like looking for revenge. He's looking to kill people. But people are trying to kill him. And so our man Hank South wants to see, that John Wick be the hunter, not the hunted. What do you think about that?
Chip, I was hoping, and listen, I can't be mad at you because it's been talked about, but I was hoping just for one full week to get through without a John Wick reference. The amount of times that we have heard. I've been on this beat for 2 months now?
2 months, and you've never heard the name John Wick more in your life.
I've never heard the name, man. And Chip, it almost makes me feel bad because I've never seen the movies. And now I feel like
it's Keanu Reeves. Like Keanu Reeves.
It's almost a requirement / rite of passage. If you are to cover the 2023 Texas Longhorns, you have to have watched John Wick because you know it's going to be referenced. Now to the point you asked.
All right, we have a homework assignment for you, Eric.
No doubt.
Okay, before the next Flagship Podcast, you got to go to Amazon or wherever you get your movies, and you got to click on that John Wick, man, and tell me what you think. I mean, listen, you don't have to like the movie. I'm not saying that. But I want to get your review, and feel free to just go Siskel and Ebert all over that thing.
I'm going to find time to negotiate with our managing editor, Jeff Howe. I'm going to slot that in for my Wednesday work, John Wick. I'm going to throw that in our content outline right now.
Seriously.
No, I mean, listen, I
love it. Eric Henry's take on John Wick as the metaphor for Texas football.
And I will have the review.
I want to read that.
We might be able to make that happen. To the question you asked.
Look at us coming up with great content ideas right here on the Flagship Podcast.
Who says we're not creative? Who says we're not creative, right? You know?
I mean, we got this.
I think, Hank made a really good point as far as being the hunter. How can you handle being, being the hunted, right? And not being that hunter. How can you handle that, right? Having that mentality of going out there and knowing all the spotlight is on you and just handling business. Because it's Chip, you can attest to this having been around these parts. You know that when things have been supposed to have been good, that's when things have kind of fallen off the rail a bit, right? It's gone off the tracks. All the talent is here. So I think it's a great point by Hank. And I also think your point that you talked about, and thanks for giving me, a shout out as far as that article, but I'm intrigued to see your point as well. You talked about Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. Bijan himself led the nation in forced missed tackles, as you said. Roschon Johnson added another 46. And to your point, not all of them were up the field. Not all of them were the second and third level of the defense. Some of them were behind the line of scrimmage. So that's something you want to see as well. Jeff, I think, you create a kind of a real natural segue into Jeff Howe's point, talking about Sark managing the game plan, right? Coming off the script. So all valid concerns in my mind. But yeah, I do think it's a really, it might even be the most pivotal point, Chip, because we've heard all fall about the attitude, right? We've asked players and coaches, why is this year different? And specificity from the players. We've heard that we have more love for each other and we care about each other and we do the things off the field together. And to an extent, some of those things are cliche in my mind, but can that amount to a mentality? Can that amount to the John Wick mentality that we've heard of, right? All of those things, they're not going to, in my mind, Chip, it comes down to talent. It comes down to having dudes. It comes down to making plays. That's what's going to, at the end of the day, be the win-loss factor, right? But as far as that mentality of handling the expectations, I do think there is something there that it comes to bonding and spending that time with each other and being in the foxhole, right? Looking next to that man next to you and knowing that you've been at Jaron Thompson's apartment watching film in the movie room. I think you were there for that presser trip, right? When they talked about the fact that they're watching film together, not only in the facility, but at each other's apartments. That's when those things come into play and play a factor. So absolutely, no doubt about it.
Yeah, they all got to be watching John Wick together. Those Culture Wednesdays that they have where they're talking about what's going on in their lives so that guys really know who they're lining up next to, what their brother is going through in his personal life, maybe, so that they can pick him up a little bit here and there. I give Sark credit for that. Those Culture Wednesdays, that stuff's real. I mean, I've talked about Dick Tomey, who at one point was the all-time winningest coach at both Hawaii and Arizona at the same time. I mean, that's how good that guy was as a coach. And, RIP Dick Tomey, he, of course, had those Desert Swarm defenses at Arizona. That guy was all about the Culture Wednesdays and getting players to share their story with each other and with their coaches so that they all know if their position coach is going through a divorce and needs, they want to feel a little bit, more connected to their coach that way. That stuff matters. And so let's see that culture and that ability to bond together in adversity, because we will not know what this team's leadership is all about. We can talk about, oh, they're leading in practice and they're leading in the meeting rooms. No, you find out what your team is made of leadership wise when you are under adversity on the field in Tuscaloosa, hopefully not this week against JT Daniels and a Rice team that ran 32 times for 5 yards against UTSA last year. But you're going to find out in Tuscaloosa, you are going to face adversity against the Crimson Tide because they're sick and tired of being dismissed and discounted. We saw that at SEC Media Days. JC Latham, their offensive lineman, was like, yeah, keep talking. We're going to show everyone. And this Alabama team, you take them lightly at your own peril. I've talked a lot about how their quarterback situation is placed to Texas's advantage. I mean, if they truly are still trying to figure it out, maybe they know and they're just like laying in the weeds. But either way, you want to play a team early if they're still trying to sort it out at quarterback. I go back to the Texas-Ohio State game in 2005 where they're going between Justin Zwick and Troy Smith. And I said, if they're playing Justin Zwick, Texas has a chance. If they're playing Troy Smith, it's going to be a whole hell of a lot harder. And the week before Texas played Ohio State, Justin Zwick was 23 of 25. I said, this is the best thing that ever happened to Texas because Jim Tressel's going to play Justin Zwick to start the game. And sure enough, he did. And Texas got up 10-zip. And then he puts Troy Smith in, and Ohio State scored 10 points in like 5 seconds. And it turned into a thriller. Somehow Justin Zwick came back into the game. I still don't know how that happened. I was like, is Tressel point shaving? What's going on here? But Texas won it last second. We know touchdown pass, Vince Young to Lima Swede. But this reminds me of that. And I know we got Alabama next week and we got Rice this week, but I'm just saying this is mindset wise. That Alabama game is what motivated this Texas football team all summer long to be out in that heat, 106 degrees. They knew we got to go to Tuscaloosa. What are they doing in Tuscaloosa? We got to out-train them in Tuscaloosa. It's a great motivating factor to have a non-conference game like that on the road, sitting there as your motivation. I want to see a team, like you said, that's hungry, that's, ready to rip people's heads off. That's what my man Jalen Catalon is all about. He's going to take your head off if he can. And I would say, I'm not trying to pump my, toot my horn or whatever, but I wrote about Jalen Catalon in the Insider last week, and I hope people get a chance to read it because it really kind of goes through where he's been and what he's all about, and the fact that he put up numbers his sophomore year in high school that people still talk about. And he had 9 interceptions in his first year on varsity for Mansfield Legacy. And his brother was the quarterback, Kendall Catalon. And it's a fascinating story. The kid is really, really talented but he's had injuries. And now we got to see if, we've seen Jordan Whittington have, back-to-back seasons wiped out by sports hernia. Now he goes in early. He's always doing extra work to make sure his body's right. Jalen Catalon, I'm hearing, is doing the same thing. Let's see if it can, work for the guy, because he's not going to change the way he plays, Eric. He's not a headhunter, but he is a bullet. I mean, he's going to hit you.
Chip, you asked that question at Media Days. Does Jalen Catalon have to change the way he plays? And I can't remember if it was PK or Sark. I want to say you asked it to PK, and the answer given to you was no. He's been given the all clear. And listen, Horns fans haven't had a chance to see just a little glimpse. We got this little taste, Chip, during their media viewing window of Jalen Catalon, right? Just a little nugget. Did that look like a guy who was hesitant at all on the practice field? I just can't wait for Horns fans to see it on Saturday, because when you're standing 6-7 yards away from him and you see them going through drills, Jalen Catalon is flying around there 100 miles an hour, and it's just noticeable. It's just like, whoa, it's noticeable in a way that catches your attention, and you take note and be like, wow, that guy, as you mentioned, not a dirty player, not a headhunter, but he's gonna make some offensive players pay, and I think that's gonna start this Saturday. So all great points on your part. And also, Chip, another great point as far as the Alabama game. To be the man, you got to beat the man, right? Bring it full circle from that Chris Beard, whatever that wrestling atmosphere was at Texas Tech a few years ago. To be the man, you got to beat the man, and that's what Texas is attempting to do at Bama. So
yeah, no yeah. All right, let's. We got to mention Maurice Blackwell. I mean, so, Texas, for the most part, made it through fall camp without major injury. You had the Savion Red shoulder injury, which he should be coming back from now. And then Maurice Blackwell, MCL knee sprain injury. His mom broke the news on her Facebook page. And it looks like he's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. And that's significant because that's the weak side linebacker position where DeMarvion Overshone played last year. And you got David Benda, you got Maurice Blackwell, and you've got Anthony Hill, the 5-star freshman, all kind of combining at that position. Anthony Hill is going to be a pass rusher in obvious pass rushing situations, more of a strong side linebacker in that sense, but he's learning the weak side linebacker position. I figure we'll probably see David Benda walk out as the starter, and then who knows after that. But Maurice Blackwell he's another guy who'll hit you. I mean, he's a former safety. He is a big time hitter. He will throw his shoulder into you and you will feel it. And that's unfortunate because I was looking forward to seeing how far Mo Blackwell has come, but he'll be out, might be past the Wyoming game. We'll see. But that is a development that we learned about this week, and one that Texas is going to have to overcome.
Chip, you pretty much well covered it there. I'll just add this, as I begin this podcast foray with you, I hope to, the audience know a little bit more about myself and more about myself. So growing up in Tampa, I was a fan of a undersized linebacker who turned out to be pretty good, an athletic guy, by the name of Derek Brooks. I only mention that because you talk about the injury with Mo Blackwell, and I think that's one of the things that was really I was intrigued about, right? Because obviously he doesn't have, the super size at 6 foot, about 210, 215 pounds. But what did we hear from David Benda? Don't let the size fool you. He will hit you. Right. And I guess that was really the kind of thing that got me really intrigued and hyped up to kind of possibly see what Mo Blackwell may be able to do, as you talked about, in that weak side linebacker competition with an Anthony Hill, with a David Benda, to see what, as you talked about, a former defensive back who got that the skill to play in coverage, but also not afraid to throw his body around and hit you. So not saying that, Mo Blackwell's a future NFL Hall of Famer like Derek Brooks, but just hearing the way he was talked about just took me back to my formative years of football, watching number 55 fly around for the Bucs. So I also wish Mo a speedy recovery, and we'll see what he can bring, when he does return to the lineup.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a quick break here on the Flagship Podcast, and then we'll come back with some take it or leave it, baby. Don't go away. Take it or leave it. Does Texas cover the 35-point spread? Oh my God, they better. Let's see what the score of that Rice UTSA game was, Eric. Let's see.
What do we got?
41-7. Oh, they didn't cover. Oh yeah, Texas has got to cover. I'm looking at like a 58-0 in this one. So I'm going to take this. Texas better cover the 35, my friend. What about you?
No disrespect to Frank Harris and the vaunted UTSA offense, and that was not sarcasm. The shout out to Jeff Traylor and what he's done in San Antonio. I mean, he's got talented pieces, but quite frankly, Texas has better offensive weapons, and we've talked about what Rice's offense has been over the past few years. It's just been bad. I mean, JT Daniels, he's going to try to get something going, but I got to go take it. I think Texas should eclipse that. I know you've got a number out there, a 58-0-esque. I am just saying I need to see a shutout and a victory by 40 or more. I mean, that seems like a reasonable expectation in my mind, Chip.
Okay. All right. Take it or leave it. Number 2. Take it or leave it. 2 or more drives for Arch Manning and or Malik Murphy in this game. What do you say, Eric?
I'm taking it, and I'm taking it because if the game is as out of reach as we expect, what did Steve Sarkisian say? I remember the quote. He said, in a perfect world, we'd love to. The question was asked at Big 12 Media Days, could non-conference play be kind of like an opportunity to get, the number 2 quarterback or even number 3 quarterback some reps? And Steve Sarkisian said, in a perfect world, that would be a great opportunity in non-conference play. Obviously not referring to Alabama. I think it was clear what the inference was, Rice and potentially Wyoming as well. Yes, I am taking it. I'll even give you a number, Chip. How about 4 drives?
Okay.
I think that's what we'll see. I mean, maybe they split it 2 and 2. Who knows? But I think this game should be out of reach by the time the fourth quarter opens, that we can get 4 drives out of a quarterback not named Quinn Ewers. How about you?
I like it. So 2 for Malik Murphy, 2 for Arch Manning.
I could see it being a very distinct possibility. No doubt.
You know what? I'm going to go with that. I'm going to take it as well, because if this is a 58-0 burger, then they should be well on their way, I would say, with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. I agree. Let's get 2 drives for Malik Murphy and 2 drives for Arch Manning, and the fans will come away from the Rice game talking only about which of those backup quarterbacks looked better, because that's why they're fans.
We'll
put them away until the Wyoming game.
I was going to say, sorry to cut you off. I was going to say, if that is the case, that's going to be the debate, right? It's not going to be anything about what we saw on the field. It's going to be who looks like the better QB too. So I couldn't help but co-sign your point there, Chip, no doubt.
All right. Take it or leave it. Number 3.
Should be on the board. Oh, okay. That is running on the ticker, Chip. So
look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
There we go.
Take it or leave it. 2 defensive takeaways and 2 sacks. I'm gonna take this one step further, Eric Henry. How about a Jahdae Barron touchdown as one of those takeaways on defense? And I'll say Anthony Hill has a sack and Barron Sorrell has a sack. Texas probably ends this game with 4 sacks and a defensive touchdown. Wow. I'm just getting all kinds of carried away here for Texas against these Rice Owls. How about you?
So you're taking it, and since you've doubled down and you've put some names to these takeaways and names to these sacks, I feel like I should do the same. How about our guy? How about Jalen Catalon with an interception? I'm willing to go Jalen Catalon pick 6. And do you want to know why I'm willing to go Jalen Catalon pick 6, Chip Brown? Because you can make the case that arguably the best game of Jalen Catalon's career came, I believe it was the 2019. I got to go check my notes. I think it was the 2019 game, Arkansas against Rice. He had 12 tackles, 2 interceptions, and a pick 6. It was a 2019 or 2020. I'll go back and check my notes. But he has the history against these Rice Owls. He knows what Mike Bloomgren, the former Stanford offensive coordinator, is looking to do offensively. The intellectual brutality has not changed. The offense has been brutal. Marcus Tuiasosopo is now the offensive coordinator at Rice, but scheme hasn't changed. So I think the Cat Man himself has some opportunities there. So I'm looking for a pick 6 from him. I will co-sign with you with the sacks. And I think for another pick, how about Malik Muhammad, someone who's been forcing some turnovers and creating some turnovers in the scrimmages. So those are my names on the defensive takeaways.
I like it. All right, kids, there you have it. That ought to get your little tailgate taste buds all fired up. If you're going to the game this Saturday, hydrate, kids. Don't get too crazy on the tailgate without hydrating all week long, okay? We don't want to see people passed out before kickoff, for crying out loud. There you go. There's our PSA. For Eric Henry, I'm Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed to the Flagship Podcast, and make sure you're an annual member at horns247.com. Everybody stay safe and keep the faith.